All right. Today we are talking to the business owners who own a company where they have employees, right? So most of our listeners are entrepreneurs or they want to be entrepreneurs in the physical therapy and healthcare space. But a good portion of them actually are already, they have employees, whether they're a LLC that does 1099s to different random mobile therapists, all the way up to what Brian's doing, where he has physical locations, employees for different roles that are non-clinical and clinical, and even managers that he's got to work with. So today we're going to talk about managing the B and C employees. So meaning in the context of like you have A employees who are the all stars, you want to put them in a machine and copy a bunch of them. But everyone who's ever hired people know that you are far more likely to get B and C employees in this analogy. So yeah, we're just going to chat a little bit about that because my history is I've hired probably 100 PTs. In my regions, I had something like 40, 50 staff, at any one time. So I have a big kind of background in this. And obviously, Brian, with his 5 clinics in Connecticut, Long Island, is doing this right now. So we think we'd be good people to talk
For
about it.
sure.
So,
I think the idea too here, Owen, is like, for a lot of people who start their own business, whether it's a mobile PT practice or a cash-based practice, a lot of what we've heard in the past is how to get talent and how to bring in talent. So we've talked a little bit about that. But what do you do once you've got it? Right. So what do you do
yeah.
once you've got it, and how do you manage that? And for Owen, having those bigger budgets, we're essentially, we're still not as big as Athletica. We're still like, we operate as individual budgets. Those we're not able to just throw tons and tons of money at A employees. By the way, you also don't know who the A employees are right off the rip. We do
Yeah.
the best we possibly can to learn, but for the most part, when you have people that you're bringing in, we think everybody's an A employee because we like them on the interview. That's why we're offering them a job. But the reality is then the colors start to show a little more and where those B and C employees come. And I told Owen, I go, we got to talk about the dum dums and how do you manage the dum dums? So because
Well,
that's what I've very much dubbed them in some of my conversations. Um, and so yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about a story and talk a little bit about what I think makes the most sense on how to manage people, and we can kind of dive into what we've seen in the school group, what we've seen in our physical growth group with some of the people that we've talked with. Because we do have a lot of solopreneurs, but we also have some people who have employees as well, including myself, obviously, and and having the experience with bigger people, bigger.
so set it up. What's
So
the
yeah,
thing that made
yeah.
you want to talk about this today? What's the case study?
So I think so. What happened was today was I walked in and I usually run a meeting, right? And when I ran a meeting, there was somebody there when I walked in who I wasn't expecting to be there, who didn't work for a company who we pay like money, right?
Wait, so
And
was it
so
like a contractor or like a vendor or
yeah, and
something?
I'm gonna be careful to name names, but yes, it was like not a
Okay, so
contractor who
I
worked
see
for
what you're
us.
saying though. It's
Yeah,
not
but
it's not
but
someone who you give a W-2 to, but it's somebody that you
no,
do business with.
it's someone we pay money. Exactly.
Yeah.
Say put money for a service, right? And I was like, what is he doing here? What is he here for? Again, I pay for this person. And one of my employees had been like, well, I wanted him to be here for like the strategy meeting. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? I was like, we don't, first we strategize, then we hire this person. You don't just like have them here because they would charge us for that. And that's
This is the
dumb.
first
And
I'm
like,
hearing of this, by the way.
exactly. Right. Exactly. And oh, by the way, yeah, I literally I have like, cause I wanted Owen's like organic stuff on it. And not
Yeah.
only that, it hijacked a meeting that I needed to explain to all my fitness guys certain things we were doing. So it also cost me my fucking time, which is the most infuriating part of the whole process.
Mhm.
So I sat down, explained it to him, kind of honestly raked him over the coals while we did it, and really was like, "You don't do this. This is how it's done." Blah 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 blah. And by the way, on top of that, I asked him to do something else a couple days ago and got excuses as to why it wasn't done. And I was like, "This is horseshit." I was like, "If you're gonna do something like this, you better have done everything else I asked you for and looking for things to do."
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, a lot of times that can frustrate us. And look, I like this guy, this person who did this. I truly like this employee. He works really hard for us, loves our company, and that is probably the thing I like about him the most is that he is willing to run in a direction to help us. However, that doesn't mean he gets to do what the fuck he wants, right? He's got to be managed. And
Yeah.
so that's what I was talking to Owen about is like, we brought this person in. Now, I have a good enough relationship with the person and we do pay him a lot of money. So he was like, listen, I wanted to come down just for blah, blah, blah. Anyway. And I was like, I got it. But at the same time, you also have to know how I feel about it and that this is inappropriate and how it's got to work moving
Yeah.
forward. So, nevertheless, that was kind of the story. Now, do I have other stories? I got fucking endless stories from dumb employees,
Yeah.
but this was just the most hot one. And so I think, I would open up to you, Owen, is you and I'll actually, what, before I kick it back to you, one of the big beliefs that I have, and again, this is going to sound kind of fucked up when I say it because we're talking about humans. I'm
Mhm.
a big believer in, like, if the dog poops in the house analogy, right?
Yeah.
So if a dog poops in the house, the idea that I've been taught by trainers is that you got to, like, correct the behavior almost immediately. And the longer that you
Yep.
let go from the behavior, the longer it goes, the more likely the dog is not going to
Yeah.
understand why you're yelling at him, right?
Yeah.
And
Immediate
so I have
feedback.
immediate feedback. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I saw this guy here, this happened. It kind of sucks in the moment that I had to like kind of lay into him a little bit with this, but I did. And I even said to him, I backed up and I was like, listen, I know I might be coming off as intense right now,
Mhm.
but you got to understand, like, how this has to go, because
Yeah.
clearly there's certain things. We had just had a little bit of a meeting, like a strategy meeting and mentorship meeting, and clearly it didn't click the first time. So sometimes first it's the carrot, then it's the stick a little bit, but it's the immediate feedback that I thought was super important. So I wanted to kick it back to you and see kind of like what strategies you would have and what you would kind of change into.
Well, I always look around the incident whenever I'm coaching people and whenever I'm saying, okay, this is the incident that obviously is, the dramatic sequence of the story, right? But you got to think there's two things. There's kind of a prologue and then an epilogue, right? And you're looking and you're saying, okay, well, the first thing is what you were talking about before. You had the mentor meetings and things like that. So there was some level of understanding that you had. And I typically, not to bash you, but I always say, okay, as a manager, it's my job to know everything. And then the employee basically gets kind of led, right? And this goes back to our A, B, and C players. Like the A players, you don't really have to do much, right? They kind of get it. They're probably going to take your job one day. They're the easy set it and forget it people. But I think something like 90, 85% of people are not A players, right? Where they're autonomous like that. And you as a manager have to kind of figure out and understand that and then understand where they're at. So I would say, like, this is a weird situation and that it's not something that happens every day. Like, I would be more concerned if it was like a daily kind of performance thing where you had a kind of blind spot of this guy's lack of understanding, right? But that's where those one-to-ones come in. That's where all that stuff comes in. I think for these like initial things, a lot of that, a lot of times I tell managers, like, you can't, that's not a thing that happens all the time. Like, your strategy meetings aren't, I'm assuming they're not happening. How often do you have your strategy meetings?
That's the part that was hard about this. I have them
Yeah.
once a week with this particular part of my team. And so
Oh,
when
okay.
that meeting got fucked, now what happens is, and you know this, now it goes 2 weeks basically.
Okay.
Or what's going to really happen is I'm going to work my ass off and have individual meetings with each one of them, which also wastes my time, right?
Okay. So then with this, in this case, you want to then just have the conversation of, look, how one of these really go, right? Um, you have to understand that this is so far outside of the bounds that it needed clearance with me first, right? And establishing that kind of command. Now, I think I'm not really mad at how you handled it, right? Like, in terms of, like, dude, this is not cool. This is what we're doing, because these are people that you're strategizing your business with. These are people that theoretically are above and beyond the average employee, right? So these are people that you're trusting their opinions. You guys are trying to figure out stuff for the future of the business. So they kind of need to know that right away, right? And
Yeah.
if it is a mission critical thing you're talking about this week that has to be done, and that person being there kind of compromises that, right? Because maybe he's in it, maybe he's not, but you can't talk freely about it. Then yeah, I mean, I don't know if you did, but I mean, I would have been like, okay, dude, you can leave. I'll call you later, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you do that, sometimes it's appropriate. I'll let you be up to that. But then it's afterwards, right? It's talking to the person after and saying, okay, this is what I expect. This is what led you to think this was okay,
Yeah.
right? Because then you're going to get a lot
I
of
like that.
things of like, well, I mean, I thought it was a good idea. So, well, then you got to say, well, okay, I'm the boss.
Yeah.
So don't
100%.
do that.
Yeah.
But if they said, like, oh, well, I thought like it would be really good for this. And then I try to figure this out, but then it felt like this is the thing. And then the last second I was like, you know what, just come to the meeting. I really want to know this. And I meant to tell you, but I'm sorry I didn't. Then you can be like, all right, like, just pause. There's other meetings. We can talk about it. You don't have to be the golden child every single meeting. Like, you're
For
on this
sure.
team for a reason. We trust you.
And this
Don't
and
make
this
rash
is
decisions.
and again, like I think this is something to come across. Like this is why I wanted to talk about this in a podcast because it was an interesting topic for sure and
Yeah.
something we have never touched on in our podcast. But I agree with Owen's second approach of what I think happened here. This kid is one of those guys who's super young and energetic, and he wants to help super badly. He just didn't do it right, right? And like
Yeah.
that's what it came down to. And give me that guy all day long because, quite frankly, like it's like the puppy that you love that you got to stick the nose in the poop or however
Uh-huh.
training technique you want. Don't cancel us.
Yeah.
Whatever the dog training thing is.
Immediate
So,
feedback.
exactly, immediate feedback. So the idea basically with what Owen just talked about was exactly the approach I took was it was tough constructive criticism that was pointed. But exactly I was like, what's your plan? Like, what's your plan here? And then there
Mhm.
was no plan. And I was like, well, then why is he here? You know what I mean? And like
Well,
it was that kind of thought process. And again, like to your point, and Owen, and actually this is something I didn't touch on that Owen just kind of reminded me of. I go, and why now during this meeting that I need time for this? You just threw a whole monkey wrench in this whole thing. That's I
mhm.
think the other part that I don't think you fully understood was like, this is my meeting, not your meeting. Don't
Yeah.
do that. Like this is not like I wanted to like the aspect of inviting this person in, we could have scheduled a separate time to talk, and then we all could have talked together, not the person's here at any given time and they can just talk. You know what I mean?
Well, and
So
I think
yeah,
this is a big I think this is a big takeaway for anybody listening is that like stuff's going to happen and it'll be entropy, man. It'll be different things. One guy's all you just described was a room full of really great employees and a contractor you liked, right? But somehow it's a problem, right?
yes,
So like everything is entropy, everything will happen with that. And you as a manager, your job is to try and foresee the future and control that as much as you can, knowing other people's tendencies, right?
yeah,
So you did the right, you have a good understanding of this employee, they're a trusted employee. You just now you're looking back and saying, wow, I did not coach this guy on like etiquette for like
yeah,
competitive business, right? He's still a little bit more of a bleeding heart idealist, right? Which again, I would take that any day. You need to refocus your coaching, right? So that's where we say when we manage B and C employees and try and move them up, a lot of people will say you can never move a B employee to an A employee. And I tell people you
I disagree.
can,
By
you
the way,
just
yeah,
can't move all B employees to A employees, right?
agreed.
So there's a lot of people who are at that B level that with the right coaching, right understanding of your systems, right understanding of what you expect and the goals of your organization can become A employees. Good managers make more A employees, right? But it
Yeah,
happens through things like this, right? And being able to have the prologue of he likes me, we are good, like he trusts that I'm doing what's in the best interest and not try and call him out in a meeting, right? To be a dick, right? And then the epilogue of you follow back up with mentorship and all that, and you repeat that over the course of 6 months to a year, and I guarantee he's going to be better, right? So
totally.
that's where when we talk about like can managers make a difference, like it's those people that make a difference.
I think the key too is like, this is the in between of like, this is not an employee that I want to fire, right? This is not an employee that I want to like discipline in that way. And quite frankly, we've created a culture where I can kind of dress him down and be like, hey, this is the deal, man. And like talk to
Yeah,
him. And like, then he takes that feedback and he gets better. And so I think that, I think the pie in the sky thing, especially a lot of people who listen to this podcast who are like, well, I'm not going to have employees or like, I'm going to hire a bunch of people. One of the things that I think that happens when people go into business for themselves is I did not, me included, by the way, when I did this. And I know Owen might even have more foresight because he did go the corporate route first. This is the advantage that Owen will have as he builds his business. For me, I manage some people, but I was able to like with you're in a different position managing people when you're not working for yourself. There's
mhm,
a different voice that people hear coming from the owner
mhm,
versus when people hear it from other employees that are holding them accountable, right? And I've
yeah,
also identified that within my business, which we're establishing really good leadership in business is important. When it comes to A employees need to become leaders of your business and you need to pay them accordingly, by the way. Like
mhm,
I
yep,
one thing I've learned is like pay employees more money so they stick around, become leaders within your company, they're fulfilled, they do really well, and they grow
mhm,
beautifully with you. On the flip side, to be naive and think, well, I'll never hire a B or C employee because I'm the greatest interviewer ever is absolutely bullshit. So you
no,
have to understand that some A employees, just like I would say to Owen, that you can absolutely take a B and C employee and move them up into an A if you coach them well. like and again, I don't think it's like a C moves to an A right overnight, but I think they can move up a ladder and climb and grow. I think some people, you know, so one of the things that can happen that I think is not like quote unquote firing people, but if you have a B or C employee that doesn't necessarily know they're a B and C employee, and when you start really holding them accountable and pushing them, they'll fire themselves, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing I've always noticed. I'm sure you have too, Owen.
Well,
And so the idea behind having those types of employees, holding them accountable, one of two things going to happen: either they're going to bail on you, or they're going to rise to the occasion, right? It's one of the
yeah.
two, and that's a big piece of that.
Well, and that's the first thing I think that is interesting what you said was that you got to create a culture, right? But it is totally fine to have a call you out culture, right? And
Yeah,
there's a lot of good companies that's what it is. That's immediate feedback. It's right in the room. Everyone respects everyone else, but they also know that they may get called out. If you do that well, it can be a very appropriate culture to be in, as long as it's not degrading, all that stuff, right? Um, and
you could
then the
agree.
other thing is what I think what you're describing is they commonly call it in literature the Peter principle, where people will succeed to their own ineptitude, right? So you will have a C person, right? And let's just say they don't care, they just want the paycheck, whatever. They will rise to the level that they just can't do anything more, right? And they'll just kind of stay there, right? And that is essentially, you might have, and I don't even want to say like a staff PT, because hopefully, like, to me, a C staff PT is like they don't care about the patients, and that's unacceptable. But like,
I will also, let me just interrupt. I also find that it's very rare with physical therapists. I
yeah,
think that there's very few physical therapists that are C employees. I find
yeah,
physical therapists are either A or B, right? I
I
mean,
agree. I agree.
mainly because
Believe
PT
me,
school, yeah,
I've seen
PT,
some C's. Like
yeah, well, that's
they're
interesting. I'm sure they're out there, but I just find
oh,
it to be rarer.
it's
And I
not
think,
pretty, man. It's
yeah, yeah.
it's it's awful because you're having a conversation about like their ethical makeup. Like, would you just spend all this
Well,
time to
that's
do?
wild. I mean, that's again,
Yeah.
like that's I don't even consider that a C because I feel like I'd be like, whoa, right? Like,
Yeah, and when it comes
yeah,
out, like, you're just like, "Oh, this person's, like, lazy," or, "Oh, they don't wanna do this," and you're like, "Oh, no, they literally don't care." Like, and some
yeah,
of them even have contempt for the patients. Like, if you start taking, like, homeless people and, like, all these other, like, Medicaid plans and stuff, like, I have seen some people from very affluent backgrounds who just straight up do not like the patients because they don't agree. They feel like they are inherently bad people, and I like, once that comes out, I'm just like, all right, man, it's either you leave or I make this so intolerable for you to exist in this place that you leave immediately, because labor laws, I can't just fire you. But like,
yeah,
those things where anyway, I could go down that road. But there, when it comes to um managing people, who you have to look at it and say, you're the entrepreneur, you're the owner, right? And I think the biggest thing we found as we've mentored people is that people who have driven themselves so much that they create a business, that they want to help the world, PT, all that stuff, right? They find it abhorrent if somebody is not exactly like them,
for
right?
sure.
And they are like, how are you not there exactly on time? How are you not following up with your patients immediately? And why aren't you marketing for me? Like, this is how we get business. Don't you understand that? And realizing that, like, yeah, there's a lot of people out there that just want a job that they can tolerate, and they want to live life without really giving that much of a crap about the extras of their job. And the sooner managers realize that and tailor their roles to that, that's the thing, is people will expect everyone to be perfectly awesome, amazing employees. Well, you're setting up half your employees to fail. Like, you should definitely, as a manager, have roles where you're very happy with someone just showing up to get a paycheck, because those people keep your machine running, especially when it's very hard to
Yeah,
find a person, right? So like, you have to understand that there's people who are not going to sign up for your leadership program. They are not going to want to do all these things, and that's totally fine. Now, they aren't going to get the pay raise the other people are, but they know that, right? So they are trading convenience. They are getting convenience. They are getting known quantity work, and they are trading the having, you know, an unlimited sort of salary. So
yeah,
these are the things that I think some entrepreneurs mess up with, is because they're so used to being the one who's like, I'll take the extra work, let's go, like, all that
yeah,
stuff. And then when somebody crosses their path that doesn't, they're like, oh, that person's trash. I'm like, well,
yeah.
no, they're not trash. They're actually a very important part of an organization, the only way you're going to scale.
Bingo,
Right.
bingo.
um
Yeah,
so
I think something that Owen talked about here that I think is really good to touch on is, and we can wrap up with this, but
Yeah.
the idea that when you're an entrepreneur and you build your business, and I get it, it's your baby. And I joke, what we have in our mentorship group, right? Owen, what is my line? I go, you can say this to me all you want. You can't. You can say it to me all you want, but you gotta stifle it.
Yeah.
The hardest part about it when you have employees is employees just don't give much as a fuck about you, about your business as you do.
No.
And I had another person say, well, why don't you just pay everybody like this per patient and blah blah blah. Like, you can't incentivize everybody all the time with that. You'll drive more talent away. So a lot of times once somebody's in there in that setting, they realize, they're like, oh shit, this is a little bit different or a little bit more complex than I thought it was. And so I think when it comes, in fact, what I would even tell you is if you have somebody who is 80% as good as you are, that's an A employee, by the way. That's what that is. When
Yeah.
you have somebody who's 50% as good as you, that's a B employee. You know, when you've got somebody who's 20%, now you're talking in the C's. So to me, it's like, can someone do 50% of what I can do? And if the answer is yes, that's a great freaking employee for you. And I think that's the adjustment of expectation that people need to have as an entrepreneur, because this guy can do classes, he can help, he wants to do promotional stuff, he wants to go to things. He's again, I honestly, in a lot of ways, as I'm talking about it, he's actually even a better employee than I'm saying, because of his ability to want to do more, right?
This podcast just got him a raise.
Well, no, well, chill, pump the fucking brakes. Pump
I'm
the
saying
brakes
it
here.
so that if he's listening to
Exactly.
this, he could be like, "Well, you're
No, he's
your
not
partner of
listening.
Physio Growth." So
No, exactly. For him, I think, and this is, if he's listening, this is what I'd say to him, is that it just people need to think more, learn more, take a step back, and then push forward and grow. That can only come from the top. So if you're not coaching your employees, you're not mentoring those employees, you're not working on what we're talking about and managing them, number one, you're shooting yourself in the foot, because you're going to need the help to grow your business and scale. And two, if you are mentoring them or just firing them and get rid of people, to Owen's point, you're not coaching people up. I have plenty of people that are, I actually pride myself. If I look at all my current employees, they're all better at what their job was before they came worked for
there you
us.
go.
And what's even great is now you know what I would also say, Owen? Another huge criteria of the A people is that those A people can also mentor those people. So now you can actually grow it that way too. So like what Owen was talking about, doing that as well. So by the way, if you ever want help with that, like that's what we do in Physio Growth, right? We've literally we for one person, we're like a sounding board. I go, bring it on. You can hit me with all the venting you need, and we'll talk about those. And this is exactly where this is meant to be, because we are all in the same boat together. Entrepreneurship can be lonely. And I think and listen, I just talked to somebody who are looking to hire, who tried starting her own business twice and failed. So there are plenty of people, again, for those also listening who are like on the fence, entrepreneurship is also a great way to do this. If you can become an A employee within a business, you will get paid more money. So
With a
like
good owner.
with a good owner,
Yeah.
find a good owner, be a good employee. Like
Yeah.
I could tell another story about that. And I'm looking at somebody who's doing something I think is dumb. She can make more money working for us than going off and doing her own thing. And I think in a year she's going to come back and talk to us. And it's and again, she's not gonna. She's in a huge. She doesn't realize how big of a leverage position she's in right now with us, because we desperately need help. Because we're growing so fast. Whereas in a year from now, maybe I have found all that help, and now she's lost that position. I have seen so many PTs lately. This is the only problem with cash PT. The grass is not always greener, guys. If you jump to the other side, and you could be a huge employee doing, getting a nice salary with a growing company and really build well, that might be way more advantageous than going off on your own sometimes. So anyway, that's the other piece I would say. So if you want that mentorship, Physio Growth, we can definitely help with that too. So
yeah, hit us up. Physio-growth.com. You'll get all the links there. Join a mentorship group, and hopefully we can help you. All right, my friend.
cool. All
We
right,
are
man.
out.
See ya.
See you.